On a Thursday night in March 2019, 25 people boarded a subway train in Manhattan and vanished without a trace. For 6 years, investigators found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, no explanation for how a 300-ton train could simply disappear from a sealed underground tunnel. Then an urban explorer crawled through a forgotten maintenance hatch and discovered something that defied every law of physics and engineering. The 6-car R62A subway train entered the tunnel beneath 14th Street Union Square at 11:49 p.m. on March 15, 2019, carrying 23 passengers and 2 crew members. The automated tracking system recorded normal operations as the train traveled south toward Astor Place through a straight section of tunnel carved from Manhattan bedrock in 1918. The journey should have taken 2 minutes and 37 seconds. The train never arrived. Urban explorer Miguel Rodriguez discovered the rusted subway cars on February 8, 2025, in a section of tunnel that had been sealed with concrete for 80 years. His headlamp illuminated the familiar blue and silver MTA livery through decades of dust and corrosion. Car 4017 sat motionless on tracks that dead-ended into solid brick, its windows intact but clouded with age. Inside, 25 bodies remained in their seats, positioned as if the train had been in normal operation when everyone aboard slowly died. Miguel Rodriguez squeezed through the rusted maintenance grate beneath City Hall Park at 2:17 a.m. on February 8, 2025. The abandoned subway platform stretched before him in perfect preservation. Decorative tiles and vaulted ceiling remained untouched since the station closed to public access in 1945. The air smelled of rust and stagnant water. Rodriguez had been documenting forgotten sections of the transit system for 3 years, posting photographs to exploration forums. He carried a digital camera, backup batteries, and detailed maps of the underground system dating back to the 1940s. His flashlight revealed intricate mosaic work that had cost the city $2.4 million when the station opened in 1904. Chandeliers hung from the arched ceiling, their brass fixtures green with oxidation. According to MTA blueprints, the tunnel beyond the station had been filled with concrete during construction of the modern subway system. Rodriguez found a narrow passage behind a collapsed security gate. The passage led into a tunnel that curved away from the main line. His headlamp beam traveled 200 feet before reaching a brick wall. The 6-car train sat in the dead-end chamber like a museum exhibit. Rust stains covered the cars after decades of accumulated grime. Car number 4017 matched the lead car that had vanished from the active tunnel system 6 years earlier. The coupling mechanisms were still engaged. The doors were sealed shut, their rubber gaskets hardened with age. Rodriguez photographed the discovery from multiple angles. The car doors showed no signs of forced entry. Windows remained intact, but were clouded with moisture and dirt. The train's exterior showed extensive rust damage, consistent with prolonged exposure to humid, underground conditions. No graffiti marked the cars. The narrow tunnel contained no electrical systems, no ventilation equipment, no connection to the active subway network. Rodriguez spent 4 hours examining the scene before contacting transit police. His cell phone had no signal 40 feet underground. He returned to street level to make the call. The responding officers initially questioned his mental state until Rodriguez provided detailed photographs and precise GPS coordinates for the maintenance entrance. James Murphy clocked in for his evening shift at the J Street Metrotech Control Center at 5:47 p.m. on March 15, 2019. The conductor had worked for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority for 15 years. He maintained a spotless safety record and perfect attendance that supervisors cited in quarterly performance reviews. Murphy lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens, with his wife Linda and their 8-month-old daughter Emma. The kitchen table was covered with vintage subway maps dating back to the 1940s. He collected them from estate sales and antique shops throughout the 5 boroughs. Murphy knew the underground system better than the streets above. He had memorized every station, every tunnel, every emergency exit between the Bronx and Brooklyn during his decade and a half of service. His co-workers described him as methodical and safety-conscious. Murphy checked his radio battery twice and reviewed route changes before every shift. The conductor's locker at the depot contained his spare uniform, pressed and hanging on a metal hook. A thermos of coffee his wife prepared each evening sat beside a photograph of his daughter, taking her first steps in their living room. Murphy's shift supervisor noted that he always arrived 13 minutes early. He used the time to inspect his equipment and review any service advisories posted on the crew bulletin board. The conductor carried a leather notebook where he recorded unusual incidents, maintenance issues, and passenger complaints that required follow-up. His entries were precise and factual, written in careful script. Murphy's wife expected him home by 2:30 a.m., a schedule he had maintained for 3 years without deviation. The conductor lived 4.2 miles from the depot, a 27-minute commute on the N train that he had timed to the minute. His apartment building was a pre-war structure with 47 units. Murphy served as the unofficial liaison between tenants and the landlord's management company. His neighbors knew him as quiet and reliable. Sarah Kim operated train number 4017 from the front cab, beginning her route at the 125th Street station in East Harlem at 11:15 p.m. The 28-year-old had transferred from the Long Island Railroad after completing her mechanical engineering degree at Queens College. She graduated summa cum laude with a thesis on urban transportation infrastructure. Kim lived with her parents in Flushing, saving money for her own apartment while paying off $67,000 in student loans. The interest consumed 23% of her monthly salary. Her colleagues described her as methodical and quiet. Kim double-checked her equipment before every shift and maintained detailed logbooks that exceeded MTA requirements. Her locker contained technical manuals for the R62A car series, a spare radio battery, and emergency contact numbers written in her precise handwriting. A small potted plant sat on the shelf that she watered every Tuesday. The train operator had logged 847 hours of tunnel time without incident. She navigated the underground maze with precision that impressed veteran conductors who had worked the system for decades. Kim's parents expected her to call when she reached the end of her shift. They had maintained this routine since she started working nights 18 months earlier. Her father operated a small restaurant in Flushing, serving Korean-Chinese fusion cuisine. Her mother worked as a medical translator at New York Presbyterian Hospital, helping Korean-speaking patients navigate complex treatment protocols. The train operator's last text message was sent to her younger brother at 11:32 p.m., confirming plans to attend their cousin's wedding the following weekend. Kim carried a canvas messenger bag containing her apartment lease application, bank statements, and documentation for a mortgage pre-approval. Her supervisor noted that Kim always submitted her paperwork on time and requested overtime assignments to supplement her base salary. The 23 passengers who boarded at 14th Street represented the typical mix of late-night commuters traveling through Lower Manhattan on a Thursday evening in March. Security footage captured their faces as they descended the stairs and swiped their Metro cards. Hospital workers finishing double shifts, college students returning from libraries, construction workers heading home to outer boroughs, business professionals carrying briefcases filled with documents for morning meetings. Dr. Patricia Valdez completed her residency rotation in the emergency department at Bellevue Hospital at 11:30 p.m. She logged 14 hours of continuous duty that included treating 3 overdose cases, a construction accident victim, and a child with suspected appendicitis. The 29-year-old had graduated from Albert Einstein College of Medicine with $340,000 in student debt and plans to specialize in trauma surgery. Valdez lived in a studio apartment on the Lower East Side. The 600-square-foot space cost $2,800 per month and contained a fold-out bed, a 2-burner stove, and medical textbooks stacked on every available surface. Construction worker Anthony Russo finished his shift at a midtown demolition project at 11:15 p.m. He operated heavy machinery that reduced a 1960s office building to rubble and twisted steel. The 41-year-old had worked construction for 18 years, starting as a laborer and advancing to equipment operator through night school courses. Russo lived in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, with his wife and 2 teenage daughters who played soccer for their high school team. His lunch cooler contained the remnants of a meatball sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of coffee that had gone cold during the 10-hour workday. NYU graduate student Jennifer Walsh left the Bobst Library at 11:40 p.m., carrying a backpack filled with research materials for her dissertation on urban sociology and gentrification patterns in Lower Manhattan. The 26-year-old was completing her PhD in her 7th year of graduate school. She supported herself with teaching assistant stipends and freelance writing assignments for academic journals. Walsh lived in a shared apartment in the Village with 3 other graduate students. They split rent on a pre-war building that lacked air conditioning and featured radiators that clanged throughout the winter months. Business consultant Rachel Stone checked emails on her iPhone while carrying a leather briefcase containing presentation materials for a 9 a.m. client meeting. The pharmaceutical company was considering office space in the financial district. The 33-year-old had worked for McKinsey & Company for 6 years, specializing in healthcare industry analysis and strategic planning. Stone lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side. She had furnished the space with modern furniture from West Elm and original artwork, purchased from galleries in Chelsea. The automated MetroCard system logged each passenger's entry timestamp with precision that would later prove crucial to investigators. College student at 11 hours 44 minutes and 12 seconds p.m. Night shift worker at 11 hours 44 minutes and 37 seconds p.m. Visiting tourist at 11 hours 45 minutes and 3 seconds p.m. Off-duty paramedic at 11 hours 45 minutes and 41 seconds p.m. Freelance graphic designer at 11 hours 46 minutes and 18 seconds p.m. The electronic turnstiles recorded the final swipes between 11:44 p.m. and 11:47 p.m. None of the passengers knew each other. Security footage showed no interactions, no conversations, no acknowledgement of shared presence on the platform. Dr. Valdez stood near the track edge, checking her phone for text messages from her boyfriend who lived in Philadelphia. Anthony Russo sat on a bench, reading a paperback mystery novel borrowed from the construction site's break room. Jennifer Walsh reviewed handwritten notes on index cards, preparing for a meeting with her dissertation advisor. Train 4017 departed 14th Street Union Square at 11 hours 49 minutes and 3 seconds p.m., according to the MTA's computerized tracking system. The system monitored every train in the network with GPS precision updated every 15 seconds. The onboard computer transmitted routine status reports confirming normal air pressure, proper electrical systems, standard passenger load, and operational door mechanisms. GPS monitoring showed the train maintaining the standard 25 miles per hour for that section of track. Automated signals controlled spacing between trains during late-night service when headways increased to 10 minutes. The emergency radio remained silent on all frequencies monitored by the control center. Automatic brake systems showed no activation or emergency stops that would have triggered immediate investigation. The train's regenerative braking system operated normally, converting kinetic energy back to the electrical grid as the cars slowed for the approaching Astor Place station. Door sensors confirmed that all passenger entrances remained closed during transit. No emergency alarm activation indicated someone attempting to exit the train between stations. At 11 hours 50 minutes and 23 seconds p.m., exactly 80 seconds after departure, all electronic signals ceased simultaneously. The GPS beacon stopped transmitting location data. The radio went silent. The onboard computer terminated its status updates. The train had vanished from the MTA's tracking network as completely as if it had been erased from digital existence. The automatic passenger counting system showed 23 individuals had boarded at 14th Street, but no corresponding exit data was recorded at any subsequent station. Control Center dispatcher Angela Foster attempted radio contact with conductor Murphy and operator Kim, but received only static on the emergency frequency. The automated announcement system at Astor Place continued broadcasting arrival times for a train that would never appear. Emergency protocols required immediate investigation of any train that failed to report its position within 3 minutes of schedule. The response brought dozens of personnel into the tunnel within half an hour. Foster had worked as a dispatcher for 11 years, handling service disruptions caused by signal failures, medical emergencies, and equipment breakdowns. She had never encountered a complete loss of communication and tracking data from an operational train. Emergency response teams entered the tunnel from both 14th Street and Astor Place stations within 28 minutes of the signal loss. They followed established procedures for locating disabled trains or injured passengers. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority suspended service on the Lexington Avenue line at 12:18 a.m. The suspension stranded thousands of passengers throughout Manhattan while investigators examined the two 847-foot passage with high-powered searchlights and portable radio equipment. Transit police cordoned off both stations with yellow tape as fire department rescue teams deployed specialized equipment designed for confined space operations. The tunnel was completely empty. Steel rails showed no signs of derailment, no gouges in the concrete walls, no debris or evidence that a 300-ton subway train had passed through the space within the previous hour. The passage appeared exactly as it had been constructed in 1918. Solid concrete walls reinforced with steel rebar contained two parallel rails mounted on wooden ties, electrical conduits for signal systems, and emergency phones stationed every 600 feet. Track geometry measurements confirmed that the rails remained properly aligned, with no indication of catastrophic failure or collision. K-9 units trained in search and rescue operations found no human scent beyond the normal residue of daily commuter traffic. The dogs detected traces of diesel exhaust, brake dust, and steel particles consistent with regular train operations. No concentrated scent pools indicated recent human presence. Sonar equipment deployed by FDNY rescue teams detected no voids or hidden chambers in the surrounding Manhattan schist bedrock. The tunnel infrastructure remained intact and functional. Signal systems continued operating normally, displaying green aspects that would have allowed train 4017 to proceed at normal speed. Electrical systems showed no power failures or voltage irregularities that might have disabled the train's propulsion or communication equipment. Emergency ventilation fans operated as designed, maintaining air quality within acceptable parameters. Transit Authority engineers examined every inch of track between the two stations, using handheld inspection tools to check for rail fractures, loose bolts, or mechanical failures that could have caused a derailment. They found no anomalies. The wooden ties remained securely fastened to the concrete tunnel floor. The third rail that provided electrical power showed no signs of damage or interruption. Signal cables remained intact and properly connected to their junction boxes. The FBI established a command center at MTA headquarters on March 17th, treating the disappearance as a potential terrorist incident that threatened national transportation infrastructure and public safety. Agent Patricia Walsh coordinated with the NYPD, Transit Police, Port Authority, and Federal Terrorism Task Force. They examined every possibility from coordinated cyber attacks to sophisticated kidnapping operations involving 25 unrelated civilians and 2 MTA employees. Bureau technical specialists analyzed the electronic logs with forensic software designed to detect evidence of system tampering, electromagnetic interference, or malicious code that could have disrupted tracking signals and communication equipment. The data showed normal operations until the precise moment the train disappeared. No gradual signal degradation, no systematic failures, no anomalies in the computerized systems that monitored train location and status throughout the network. Geological surveys of the tunnel and surrounding area revealed solid Manhattan schist bedrock with no natural caverns, fault lines, or structural anomalies that could have caused a sudden collapse or sinkhole. Ground-penetrating radar deployed by the Army Corps of Engineers found no evidence of construction, excavation, or hidden passages beneath street level. Engineers from Columbia University examined the tunnel's original construction blueprints, archived at the New York Public Library and the Municipal Archives. The passage was exactly as designed in 1918, with no modifications, renovations, or structural changes since its completion. The concrete walls measured 18 inches thick, reinforced with steel rebar in a grid pattern that provided structural integrity capable of supporting the weight of buildings above. The investigation expanded to include comprehensive background checks on all MTA employees with system access, interviews with family members of the missing passengers, and analysis of security footage from 47 subway stations throughout Manhattan. Investigators reviewed financial records, phone logs, email accounts, and social media activity searching for connections between the victims or evidence of coordinated planning. They found no relationships, no shared contacts, no communication between any of the missing individuals prior to March 15th. The families of the missing passengers gathered at 14th Street Station on March 18th, holding photographs and demanding answers from MTA officials who had no explanations to offer. David Kowalski's 7-year-old daughter, Sophia, asked her grandmother why her father's construction company called every morning looking for him. Heavy machinery sat idle at job sites without an operator. Dr. Patricia Valdez's colleagues at Bellevue Hospital organized search parties, distributing flyers throughout Greenwich Village and posting missing person notices on medical community bulletin boards. Anthony Russo's construction crew donated overtime wages to hire a private investigator who specialized in missing persons cases. Former NYPD detective Frank Morrison had worked cold cases for 23 years before retiring. Morrison interviewed Russo's co-workers, examined his personal belongings left in the construction site trailer, and traced his movements during the hours before he boarded the subway. The investigation revealed no enemies, no debts, no personal problems that might have motivated voluntary disappearance. Jennifer Walsh's academic advisor contacted university security and filed a missing student report that triggered notifications to campus police and graduate student organizations. The mayor held daily press conferences beneath the glare of television lights, assuring the public that the subway system remained safe, while transportation experts struggled to explain how trains could simply vanish from sealed underground passages. Media outlets dubbed the incident the ghost train of 14th Street, broadcasting theories that ranged from terrorism and organized crime to government cover-ups and parallel dimensions. The MTA offered a $1 million reward for information leading to the location of the missing train, generating over 3,000 tips from the public. Each lead required investigation by teams of detectives and transit workers who found no evidence of the missing train or any of the 25 individuals who had vanished. Psychics, conspiracy theorists, and amateur investigators contacted law enforcement with theories that were documented and dismissed. The case was transferred to the NYPD Missing Persons Unit in May 2019 after federal investigators concluded their examination without finding evidence of criminal activity, terrorism, or threats to national security. Detective Maria Santos inherited a file containing 4,847 pages of witness statements, technical reports, forensic analysis, and investigative summaries that pointed to no logical conclusion. Santos had worked missing persons cases for 12 years, handling runaway teenagers, domestic violence victims, elderly individuals with dementia, and adults who had chosen to disappear and start new lives. She had never encountered a case involving the simultaneous disappearance of 25 unrelated individuals who had no apparent motive for voluntary disappearance. The families continued their private investigations, hiring psychics who claimed to sense the passengers' presence in underground tunnels, former FBI agents who promised breakthrough investigative techniques, and grief counselors who helped them process the psychological impact of losing loved ones under impossible circumstances. Angela Thompson's mother sold her house in Georgia and moved to New York City, spending her retirement savings on private investigators. Dr. Valdez's parents established a scholarship fund for medical students at Albert Einstein College of Medicine, creating a memorial that honored their daughter's commitment to emergency medicine while maintaining hope that she might still be found alive. Anthony Russo's wife organized weekly vigils at 14th Street Station, gathering with other families to light candles and share memories. The tunnel was returned to normal service in June 2019, with trains passing through the same section where train 4017 had disappeared. Passengers remained unaware they were traveling through the site of the city's most baffling mystery. The MTA installed additional sensors, cameras, and emergency communication systems throughout the network. The technology upgrades cost $47 million and were completed over 18 months. Santos reviewed the evidence files monthly, searching for new patterns or overlooked connections that might provide direction for renewed investigation. She interviewed family members on the anniversary of the disappearance, hoping that additional time might have revealed relevant information about the victim's final days. The detective found no new leads, no witnesses, no physical evidence that might explain the disappearance. Rodriguez had been exploring abandoned sections of the subway system for 3 years when he discovered the maintenance entrance to the sealed City Hall station. He followed rumors of hidden chambers beneath the financial district. The 34-year-old electrician worked construction jobs during the day and explored forgotten urban infrastructure during weekend nights. He photographed architectural details and mechanical systems that had been preserved in darkness for decades. Rodriguez found city engineering blueprints from the 1940s at the municipal archives, studying plans that showed the tunnel section beyond City Hall Station as filled with concrete during construction of the modern subway system. The official records indicated that the tunnel had been abandoned when passenger traffic patterns changed and longer platforms were built to accommodate modern trains. The ornate platform had been closed to the public since 1945. Decorative tiles and vaulted ceiling were preserved in perfect darkness beneath the municipal building. Rodriguez's exploration of the narrow passage behind a collapsed gate revealed tracks that curved away from the main line before ending at a brick wall. The abandoned tunnel contained no electrical systems, no ventilation equipment, no connection to the active subway network. Rodriguez spent 6 hours examining the tunnel before discovering the subway train. He documented his route with digital photographs and GPS coordinates recorded in a waterproof notebook. The abandoned tunnel measured 847 feet in length, with a maximum width of 22 feet and a ceiling height that varied from 14 to 18 feet, depending on the bedrock contours. The walls showed tool marks from the original excavation, carved by hand tools and dynamite during construction that began in 1902 Stalactites had formed over decades of water seepage, creating mineral deposits that hung from the ceiling like frozen tears. The air temperature remained constant at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity levels near saturation that promoted rust formation on any metal surfaces. The subway train sat like a museum exhibit that had been abandoned by its curators. 6 cars arranged in normal operational configuration, covered with rust stains and decades of accumulated grime that had built up in layers like geological sediment. Car number 4017 clearly identified the consist as the train that had vanished from 14th Street, with MTA numbering systems and maintenance stickers that matched records from the active fleet. Emergency crews returned to the underground on February 9, 2025, following Rodriguez through the maintenance hatch and into the tunnel that, according to official records, should not have existed. Transit Authority engineers confirmed that the passage was not shown on current infrastructure maps and had been classified as filled and abandoned since 1945. The train's doors required pneumatic cutting tools to breach after decades of rust had seized the mechanical systems and hardened the rubber gaskets beyond normal flexibility. Transit workers used portable generators to power the equipment, working in confined space conditions that required respiratory protection and continuous air monitoring for toxic gases. Inside car 4017, they found James Murphy seated in the conductor's position, his MTA uniform faded but intact, his radio still clipped to his belt with the battery compartment corroded beyond function. Murphy's body showed advanced decomposition consistent with 6 years in a humid underground environment. His employee identification badge was still attached to his shirt pocket, and his leather notebook contained handwritten entries dated March 15, 2019. Sarah Kim was discovered at the operator's controls in the front cab, her hands positioned on the throttle and brake controls as if she had been driving the train when death occurred. Kim's engineering textbooks were stacked beside her seat, along with her canvas messenger bag that contained apartment lease applications and bank statements that had become illegible with moisture damage. The 23 passengers remained in their original seating positions throughout the 6 cars, briefcases and backpacks resting on their laps or beside their feet as if frozen in time during a normal subway ride. Dr. Patricia Valdez sat in car 3, with her hospital ID badge still visible on her scrubs. Her canvas bag contained medical textbooks and a stethoscope that had remained with her body through years of decomposition. Anthony Russo's construction hard hat had fallen to the floor beside his lunch cooler. His steel-toed work boots showed the same concrete dust that had been present on March 15, 2019. Jennifer Walsh's backpack remained wedged between seats, containing research materials for her dissertation that had never been completed. Her laptop computer was corroded beyond repair, but handwritten notes on index cards remained partially legible despite moisture damage. Medical examiner Dr. Rachel Park determined that all 25 individuals had died from dehydration and starvation, a process that would have required 3 to 6 weeks, depending on individual health, body weight, and access to any residual water sources. Park's preliminary examination revealed no trauma, no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, or evidence of foul play. The victims appeared to have remained in their seats throughout the dying process. This suggested either unconsciousness, physical restraint, or psychological factors that prevented normal survival responses, like attempting to break windows or force open doors. Federal investigators considered multiple theories to explain the impossible discovery. Corporate cover-up scenarios suggested that MTA officials might have moved the train to conceal a construction accident or infrastructure failure that could have resulted in massive liability claims. Experimental military technology theories proposed that classified government projects might have tested transportation or cloaking devices using civilian subjects without their knowledge. Organized disposal by unknown groups raised questions about whether criminal organizations had orchestrated the disappearance. None of the theories explained how a modern subway train had reached a tunnel that had been sealed with concrete and brick since 1945. Engineering surveys conducted by the Army Corps of Engineers confirmed that the chamber had been sealed in 1945 and remained isolated from all active transit infrastructure throughout the subsequent 80 years. The tunnel walls were solid concrete, reinforced with steel rebar, showing no signs of modification, renovation, or structural changes since the original construction. The train could not have reached its final location through any known route, yet forensic analysis of the car wheels, brake systems, and undercarriage components showed clear evidence of recent travel on active subway rails. The abandoned tunnel measured exactly as shown in 1945 construction blueprints. The walls showed tool marks from the original excavation, carved by hand tools and dynamite during construction that began in 1902. The car bodies showed extensive rust damage from humid conditions, with paint faded and peeled in patterns, suggesting years of moisture and temperature fluctuations. No graffiti marked the surfaces. Coupling mechanisms remained engaged, suggesting the consist arrived as a unit. Windows showed no breakage, but were clouded with decades of moisture condensation. The brick walls sealing both tunnel ends showed mortar that had hardened over 80 years, with no tool marks or reconstruction evidence. The tunnel contained no food sources, no water supplies, no emergency equipment. The victims had apparently survived on whatever snacks, beverages, or medications they carried when boarding the train at 14th Street. These resources would have been exhausted within days under normal consumption patterns. Some victims had survived longer than others, with decomposition patterns suggesting that deaths occurred over a period of several weeks rather than simultaneously. Dr. Valdez, the emergency room physician, appeared to have been among the last to die, possibly surviving longer due to medical knowledge about rationing water and calories during extreme survival situations. The scene suggested either mass unconsciousness, physical restraint, or psychological factors that prevented normal survival responses in 25 different individuals over several weeks. The train doors were found sealed, but showed no evidence of attempts to breach them from the inside. Windows remained intact, with no cracks, scratches, or impact marks that would have indicated efforts to break the glass. The positioning of bodies suggested they had remained conscious but immobile during the weeks of slow death. No personal belongings were scattered, no evidence of struggle or panic, no indication that anyone had attempted to explore the tunnel. The FBI classified the case file under national security provisions, restricting media access to the tunnel and limiting information released to the families of the victims. Agent Walsh coordinated with the Department of Homeland Security to examine whether the incident might represent a previously unknown threat to transportation infrastructure. The investigation's final report concluded that the train and passengers had been found in a location that should have been inaccessible. The report cited unexplained circumstances and recommended against further investigation, noting that additional resources would be unlikely to provide answers to questions that defied known physics and engineering principles. The discovery answered the fundamental question of where train 4017 had gone, but created new mysteries about how it had arrived in an impossible location. The families of the 25 victims finally received closure after 6 years of uncertainty, able to bury their loved ones and begin the grieving process that had been suspended while they searched for answers. David Kowalski's daughter Sophia, now 13 years old, learned that her father had been found, but received no satisfactory explanation for how he had died in an abandoned tunnel beneath the financial district. Anthony Russo's wife organized a memorial service attended by his construction crew, co-workers who had spent 6 years wondering whether their friend had chosen to disappear or had been the victim of foul play. The MTA sealed the tunnel with steel plates and concrete barriers to prevent future access. The location was classified as a restricted area under federal security regulations. The maintenance hatch in City Hall Park was welded shut and covered with a steel plate that bore no identifying marks or warnings about the discovery beneath. The impossible questions remained unanswered despite 6 years of investigation and the resources of multiple federal agencies. The walls that surrounded the train showed no passages, no hidden chambers, no method of entry explaining the presence of 6 subway cars. If the train had been immediately transported to the abandoned tunnel after disappearing from the active system in 2019, why did the medical evidence show that passengers had survived for weeks before dying? And if the 25 individuals had lived in the sealed chamber for weeks, slowly succumbing to thirst and hunger while trapped in a stationary train, why had no one attempted to break through the car windows, force open the doors, or escape into the tunnel where they might have searched for water, food, or a route back to the surface?